6 beings. 6 names carved into clay tablets older than any book you have ever read. And according to the Sumerians, those 6 beings never actually left. They rule this planet from the shadows. Not from thrones, not from palaces, from somewhere else entirely. The oldest of them was here before the first city. The youngest was here before Egypt built a single pyramid, and every one of them is still watching. Modern historians will tell you these are myths. Just stories the Sumerians told to explain a world they did not understand. But then you read the tablets yourself, and you notice something strange. The Sumerians never once called them gods in the way we use the word. They called them the ones who came down, the ones who decide, the ones who wait. And when you rank those 6 beings by their age, from the oldest to the youngest, a pattern emerges that history was never supposed to show you. Because the ranking is not random. The ranking follows a logic, and that logic tells you exactly what these 6 beings are still doing right now. The older ones do less, the younger ones do more. The oldest one sits at the top and almost never acts. The youngest one moves constantly and without warning. In between them, 4 other beings carry out the actual work of ruling this planet from behind whatever curtain hides them from ordinary human sight. And every one of those 4 operates in a different way, with a different personality, with a different set of interests. 6 beings, 6 ranks, and 6 roles inside a 5,000-year-old record that describes how they operate. Sumerian priests spent generations mapping the movements of these 6. They tracked when each one was active, they tracked when each one was distant, they tracked when each one was watching, and when each one was asleep. And the priests kept records that were passed down from one temple generation to the next, carved into stone and clay so that no future king would forget the schedule, because the schedule mattered. When one of the 6 was active, certain decisions were dangerous. When one of the 6 was asleep, certain decisions were safe. And the ranking by age was the master key to reading that schedule, a schedule the priests guarded with their lives. The clay tablets were pulled from the ground in southern Iraq, from a place the Sumerians themselves called the land between 2 rivers. Cuneiform, wedge-shaped script pressed into wet clay with a reed. Sumerian is the oldest written language on Earth that scholars can still translate. It has no parent language. It appears fully formed, around 5,500 years ago, in a civilization that also appears fully formed. No development curve. No slow rise, just a working society with mathematics, astronomy, law, and irrigation. And at the center of that society, 6 figures stand above the rest. Modern textbooks list them as deities in a pantheon. That is not what the Sumerians said. The Sumerians said these 6 were real. They said these 6 arrived from somewhere in the sky. They said these 6 built the first cities and then handed the day-to-day running of the world to human kings, while they stepped back into positions of hidden authority. And they said the 6 are still ranked by age, because among them, age is authority. Consider what that means for a moment. Consider a civilization that produced the first legal codes, the first system of written contracts, the first observations of the movement of Venus, the first sexagesimal mathematics that we still use today when we measure time in 60-second minutes and 360-degree circles. That civilization is not one you should dismiss lightly. That civilization was not naive. And that civilization insisted, in tablet after tablet, that 6 specific beings ranked by their age ruled the earth. Not from the palaces of Uruk, not from the ziggurats of Ur, from somewhere behind those places. From a position the Sumerians described in ways that sound less like religion and more like a chain of command. There are certain tablets, held today in the British Museum, in the Louvre, in the University of Pennsylvania, in the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin, that lay these 6 beings out in a specific vertical order. The order does not change from tablet to tablet. It does not change from city to city. It does not change from Sumerian to Akkadian to Babylonian to Assyrian. 4 separate civilizations, spanning 3,000 years, agreed on the ranking. And every one of those civilizations agreed that the ranking was based on one factor: age. So before we count them, understand the frame. This is not mythology. This is what the Sumerians recorded as history. And every one of these 6 has a story that gets stranger the closer you look. And before we go further, I need to pause for a second. Because what I am about to tell you about the oldest of these 6 gets significantly darker. And I realized a while ago that some of this cannot be fully explained in a video format. The complete breakdown of all 6 beings, their tablet designations, the translated passages that name them, and the astronomical alignments the Sumerians tied to each one. I put it all into a written document. It is linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Now let us continue. The oldest of the 6 is Anu, sometimes written An. In the Sumerian language, his name simply means sky, not the god of the sky itself. And that is your first clue about who the Sumerians thought he was. Anu is the being they placed at the top of every list, in every tablet, in every temple record they ever kept. He is the father of the gods, the grandfather of the pantheon, the one who existed before the separation of heaven and earth. In the creation account carved into the Enuma Elish tablets, Anu is described as the ruler of the highest heaven, a place the Sumerians called the sphere that cannot be reached. He does not walk among humans. He does not appear in the courts of kings. He rules by absence. And that absence is the point, because the Sumerians believed that Anu had once come down to earth in the distant past before written history began. He came down with his consort, a female figure named Antu, and together they walked among the first civilizations of the world. Then he ascended. He returned to the sphere that cannot be reached, and he has been ruling from there ever since. The Anu star, which modern astronomers identify as a specific point in the constellation now called Aquarius, was tracked by Sumerian priests for centuries. They believed that when the Anu star reached a certain elevation in the night sky, Anu himself was watching. And on those nights, entire cities went silent. Kings did not hold court. Judgments were postponed. Because when Anu watches, nothing you do goes unrecorded. Modern historians dismiss this as superstition. But here is what makes Anu strange. The number of tablets that reference him by name outnumber every other figure in the Sumerian record by a factor of nearly 3 to 1. He is mentioned more than any king, any city, any war. And when the Sumerian civilization ended, when the language died and the tablets were buried, the Babylonians inherited Anu. They kept his name. They kept his rank. And when the Assyrians conquered the Babylonians, they kept him too. He is the being no successor civilization ever tried to replace. Which means for over 3,000 years of continuous human record keeping, one figure sat at the top. And every one of those civilizations agreed that he was the oldest. Not the strongest, not the most active, the oldest. Because among the six, age is the only thing that matters. The second oldest of the six is Ninhursag. Her name translates as Lady of the Sacred Mountain. In some tablets, she is called Ki, which means earth. In other tablets, she is called Ninma, the exalted lady. And in the oldest tablets of all, she is called the Mother of the Gods, because according to the Sumerians, Ninhursag was there before Enlil, before Enki, before every one of the younger four. She stood beside Anu in the sphere that cannot be reached. And when Anu descended to earth for the first time, she descended with him. That is why the Sumerians tied her to the mountains, not because she lived on them, because she came down through them. The Sumerians believed that the sacred mountain was a landing point, a place where beings from the sphere passed between one world and the next. And Ninhursag was the first to make that passage after Anu. But her role is where the story turns strange. Because Ninhursag is not just old, she is the being the Sumerians credited with the creation of humans. There is a tablet found at Nippur, one of the oldest religious centers in Mesopotamia, that describes a moment when the younger gods came to Ninhursag and asked her to make a servant, someone to do the work of digging canals and tending crops, and Ninhursag agreed. She mixed clay with the blood of a slain god, and from that mixture, she shaped the first man and the first woman. Modern historians read this as a poetic origin myth, but the tablet does not describe it as poetry. It describes it as a procedure, step by step, with specific ingredients, with specific conditions, and with a warning. Because the first attempts failed, Ninhursag made 7 prototypes before she got the 8th one right, 7 flawed humans. And each of those 7 prototypes is described with clinical precision. A being that could not swallow, a being with no gender, a being whose eyes did not close. This is not myth, this is a record. And the Sumerians said that Ninhursag is still watching what she made. She sits in the shadows because she is the one who has to answer for us. Not to us, for us. To Anu. And to whatever is above Anu. Which is why her name still appears at the 2nd position on every ranked list of the 6. Because whoever made you is older than everyone but the one who sent them. The 3rd oldest of the 6 is Enlil. His name means Lord of the Air, or in some translations, Lord of the Command. He is the firstborn son of Anu. And in the Sumerian ranking, he is the most active of all 6. Enlil is the one who runs the day-to-day. If Anu is the distant king who watches from above, Enlil is the general who executes the orders. And in almost every Sumerian tablet where a decision is made about humanity, Enlil is the one making it. He chose the first Sumerian king. He granted the tablets of destiny to specific rulers. And he is the one, according to a tablet called the Atrahasis, who ordered the flood that nearly destroyed humanity. because Enlil grew tired of the noise. The tablet says that human beings had multiplied so quickly and had become so loud with their construction and commerce that Enlil could no longer sleep, so he called a council of the six. He proposed a solution: wipe humanity out and start again. The other five debated. Enki objected. Ninhursag was silent. Anu did not attend. And Enlil, as the ranking active member of the council, made the call. That flood story, written on clay in Sumerian, predates the biblical flood account by over 1,000 years. And in the Sumerian version, the flood was not divine judgment. It was an administrative decision made by a being who was tired of being kept awake. This is the third oldest of the six. This is the one who makes the actual decisions. And this is the one you almost never hear about in modern religious tradition, because his personality is inconvenient. He is not merciful, he is not wise, he is efficient. Enlil rules from the shadows because his role is the one no one wants to look at directly. He is the being who decides when a nation has become too loud, and according to the tablets, he is still doing it. Every collapse in recorded history, from the fall of Ur to the late Bronze Age collapse, is attributed by later Mesopotamian scribes to a decision made by Enlil. When he acts, entire empires disappear inside a single generation. And before we move on to the next of the six, stop for a second. What you just heard about Enlil is the part that changes everything. But it only makes sense when you see it written out next to the original Sumerian tablet numbers, the passages where his council votes are recorded, and the specific civilizations he is credited with ending. It is all in the document linked below. Take 5 seconds right now, grab it, and then come back. Because what comes next builds directly on it. The link is in the description. The QR code is on your screen. The fourth of the six is Enki, sometimes written Ea. He is the second son of Anu, younger than Enlil, and in the ranking of age, he sits directly beneath his brother. But in the ranking of intelligence, the Sumerians placed him first. Enki is the god of wisdom, the god of fresh water, the god of hidden knowledge, and in every story where humanity survives an encounter with the older gods, Enki is the one who protected them. When Enlil ordered the flood, Enki broke council protocol. He went to a man named Ziusudra, sometimes called Utnapishtim in later Babylonian versions, and he warned him. He told Ziusudra to build a boat. He gave him the measurements. He told him what to load and when to load it. And when the flood came and every other human on earth drowned, Ziusudra survived, because Enki violated the ruling of his older brother. This is why Enki is the being humans pray to when they want secrets. He is the one who taught the first humans metallurgy, astronomy, and writing itself. The Sumerians believed that every civilizing skill possessed by humanity was originally an Enki gift. He handed it down against the wishes of the council. And that act of defiance is the reason he sits in the shadows now. Because Enki is watched. Watched by Enlil, watched by Ninhursag, watched by Anu. He operates in secret because openly acting against the older three would end him, and so his interventions are quiet. A whisper to a scribe, a dream sent to a king, a pattern hidden in a star map. Modern occult traditions, the ones that survive in fragments through the Western esoteric record, trace their origin back to Enki. He is the being credited with teaching the first mystery schools. He is the being whose name shows up, disguised in half a dozen later religious traditions as the wise serpent, the water bearer, the keeper of forbidden knowledge. And here is what makes his position dangerous. The tablets say that Enki is the only one of the six who wants humans to know the truth. The other five prefer that we do not know. Enki disagrees. And that disagreement, that quiet rebellion, is still going on. If you have ever had a moment of sudden insight that felt like it came from somewhere outside you, the Sumerians would tell you Enki sent it, and they would tell you to be careful. Because when Enki gives you knowledge, the older three notice. The tablets describe a specific pattern. When Enki intervenes, the intervention is always quiet at first. A single human learns something new. That human teaches a few others. Those others build something with the knowledge. And by the time Enlil or Ninhursag realizes what has happened, an entire culture has been transformed. This is how Enki works, not through dramatic appearances, through slow seeding. And the Sumerians said that every great leap forward in human history, every sudden jump in what a civilization could do, was Enki quietly breaking the rules again. The fifth of the six is Marduk. And with Marduk, the story shifts. Because Marduk is not from the original generation. He is the son of Enki, younger than his father, younger than his uncles. And in the old Sumerian tablets, he barely appears at all. He is a minor figure, a local god of the city of Babylon. And then something changes. Around the time the Sumerian civilization ends and the Babylonian civilization rises, Marduk suddenly becomes the most active being in the pantheon. His name appears on more tablets. His temples become the largest in Mesopotamia. And a new creation story, the Enuma Elish, is written in which Marduk defeats the primordial dragon Tiamat and takes the tablets of destiny for himself. Modern historians explain this as political propaganda. The Babylonians wanted their local god elevated, so they rewrote the pantheon. But the Sumerian ranking survives underneath, and in that ranking, Marduk is still fifth. He is still younger than his father Enki. He is still younger than his uncle Enlil. He is still younger than Ninhursag. He is still younger than Anu. What changed was his activity level. Marduk stopped waiting. He took control. And the tablets that record his elevation describe it not as a natural succession, but as a takeover. Marduk challenged the older generation. He argued that the world had changed, that the systems the older four had built were no longer working, that humanity needed a ruler who understood the new age. And he won that argument. The older four, according to the tablet, granted him operational control of Earth, not because they agreed with him, but because he was persistent, and because Enki, his father, backed him. This is the being who rules the current age. According to the Babylonian reading of the tablets, we are still living under Marduk. He is the one making the calls about which nations rise now. And here is the strange part. Marduk is described in the tablets as having something the older four do not have. Emotion. He gets angry. He holds grudges. He takes things personally. The older four are described as procedural, distant, calculating. Marduk is described as furious. And that fury is why he sits in the shadows. Because a ruler who takes things personally is a ruler who watches, constantly. And according to the tablets, Marduk is watching now. The Babylonian priests wrote that Marduk kept a list. A ledger of every insult, every slight, every ruler who had ever crossed him. And that ledger was never closed. Grievances could carry forward across generations. A king who wronged Marduk could die peacefully in old age, only for that king's descendants to inherit the debt. The Sumerians who watched Marduk rise did not describe him as a benevolent inheritor of the old order. They described him as impatient, ambitious, focused on results in a way the older four never had to be, because the older four had time. Marduk did not. He was the youngest of the ruling generation, and he moved like it. The sixth and youngest of the six is Inanna, sometimes called Ishtar in the later Babylonian and Assyrian traditions. She is the granddaughter of Anu, the daughter of Nana, the moon god, and in the ranking of age, she is the newest addition to the council. But do not mistake young for weak. Inanna is described in the tablets as the most feared of all six, not the most active, the most feared, because Inanna is the being who moves without warning. The other five follow protocols. Enlil holds counsel. Enki whispers. Anu watches. Ninhursag remembers. Marduk broods. Inanna acts. She is the being of war, of love, of sudden transformation. And in the Sumerian tablets, she is credited with the sudden rise and fall of specific rulers whose decisions did not fit into the plans of the older five. If a king pleased her, his city flourished overnight. If a king displeased her, he was found dead by morning. There is a famous tablet called The Descent of Inanna, in which she travels to the underworld, is stripped of her authority, is killed, and is resurrected. Modern scholars read it as a fertility myth, but the tablet reads more like a report. It describes her passing through 7 gates. At each gate, she surrenders one item, a crown, a necklace, a robe, until she stands stripped in the presence of her sister, the queen of the underworld, and then she is killed. And then, after 3 days, she is brought back. This is the youngest of the six. This is the being who is still moving, still acting, still adjusting the world in real time. And this is the being the Sumerians said was closest to humanity. Because she is the youngest, she remembers what it was like to be new. She feels things the older five stopped feeling long ago, which is why she is dangerous. A being who feels, and who has the authority to act on those feelings, is a being who cannot be predicted. Inanna is the one you notice. When your life changes suddenly, when a decision you did not plan for arrives from nowhere, when a person appears in your life or leaves it without warning, the Sumerians would tell you Inanna is nearby. And they would tell you to be careful how you respond. Because Inanna, more than any of the other five, is the being who tests you. The tablets describe her tests as brief. She does not linger. She arrives, she watches how you handle what she has placed in front of you, and she leaves. Sometimes she rewards, sometimes she punishes, and sometimes she simply notes the outcome and moves on. But the Sumerians said that every human being encounters Inanna at least once in their life. Not as a physical presence, as a moment, a crossroads, a choice that seemed to appear from nowhere and demanded an immediate response. That is her signature. And whether you passed or failed her test, the record of it is added to whatever ledger the six keep about you. 6 beings, ranked by age, from Anu at the top to Inanna at the bottom. And the Sumerians said all 6 are still here, not on thrones, not in temples, in the shadows. Watching, deciding, sometimes acting. And the older they are, the less they move. Anu has not visibly acted in thousands of years. Ninhursag watches from her mountains. Enlil issues rare, catastrophic decisions. Enki whispers. Marduk broods and controls the present age. Inanna moves constantly and without warning. That is the hierarchy. That is the ranking. And the reason it matters is because the Sumerians were the first civilization to write anything down. Everything we know about the ancient world begins with them. And they did not describe these 6 as gods invented by humans. They described them as beings who arrived from somewhere else, who built the first cities, who created humanity, and who then stepped back into positions of hidden authority from which they still operate. Modern historians will tell you this is myth, but the Sumerians called it history. And the tablets they left behind describe procedures, decisions, votes, and interventions with a specificity that mythology usually lacks. So you have a choice. You can accept the modern reading that 6 imaginary figures were invented to explain a world the Sumerians did not understand. Or you can accept the Sumerian reading that 6 real beings ruled the earth from the shadows, that they still do, and that the oldest of them has been watching this planet since before the first city was built. Whichever reading you choose, one detail remains. The tablets are still in museums, the names are still readable, and the ranking, from oldest to youngest, has not changed in 5,000 years. Anu at the top, Ninhursag beneath him, Enlil beneath her, Enki beneath his brother, Marduk beneath his father. Inanna at the bottom, moving faster than any of the others, watching the world change moment by moment while the older 5 remain still. 6 beings, 6 ranks, and a hierarchy the Sumerians said was permanent, because among these 6, no one dies, no one ages, no one is replaced. The order was set the moment they arrived, and the order will hold until whatever brought them here decides to end the arrangement. Until then, they rule from the shadows. The tablets remain the only record of who is actually in charge of this planet. The Sumerians wrote it down because they wanted the next civilization to know, and they did not want that knowledge to go. And 5,000 years on, we hold it.